Welcome to episode 46 of the Mindful Marketer Livestream. Content, careers, and customer engagement. Those are the three hot issues right now that my clients and all of you in the LinkedIn Live community tell me are the most important to you right now. And that's why today we're doing something a little different. It's going to be the Ask Me Anything show. And now that we've completed 45 of these shows, we just have seen a pile up of questions, and we want to make sure that we address some of the most critical or the most pressing issues that our audience is experiencing right now. So before I bring my special guest to the screen with us today, with the help of my great producer, Stefan Kaplan, I have a couple of special announcements. So the first special announcement I have is that I'll be speaking at the Mid-Atlantic Marketing Summit coming here in the Washington, D.C. area on November 10th. And not only am I excited about the topic, which is going to be about the need for speed and the 7 habits of modern CMOs, but I'm also pleased to announce that through special arrangements, I have found a way to give away one ticket, a complimentary ticket valued at $300 to someone who would be interested in joining me at the summit. So make sure you send me an email or put your name in the chat, and we'll make sure that we connect after today's live stream for additional details. So, as they say, you must be present to win. The other thing I want to tell you is we have another announcement coming up at the end of the live stream. So be sure that you stick around until 2:10 p.m. and that's Eastern time. So let me also welcome people and have you put in the comments, put in the chat, tell us, where are you from today? And give us your name in case the LinkedIn feed doesn't give us your name and profile. So let's talk for a minute about the questions coming up. Again, content, customer experience, branding, customer engagement, and career planning. These are very big topics right now, and we are ready to address them. So Michael Taylor has more than 2 decades of working with over 150 of some of the world's top brands on marketing strategy and branding, among other strategy-related topics. And he's with us today from Atlanta, Georgia. Michael Taylor, good afternoon.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we've been getting a lot of questions, and we're waiting for some people to join up here and tell us where they're from today. Tell us what's one of the hot topics that you've been seeing out in the market as we slowly emerge from the COVID cocoon?
Well, I think probably the biggest one is virtualization and settling on what I'm seeing is a focus on some kind of a hybrid model. I think many of our clients are starting to go out. They're starting to do their live sessions. They're starting to do their conferences, but not everybody's going. And so, I would say the next normal is that some people are going to show up to events, and then some people are going to come in virtually. So there's a lot of discussion about how to do that and how to do everything hybrid, right? Is how to use the virtual tools that we all been using, and how do we integrate those into the kind of seeping back of live events. I would say that's at the top. I also think that because people have not been meeting, there's a lot more noise on the social channels, because those are our channels. So there's the sheer volume of messaging and I guess the need to break through that noise is a big topic. nowadays.
I think if you haven't done it already and you're watching this live stream, make sure that you follow Michael on one of my favorite channels, which is LinkedIn, because one of the things you call yourself, Michael, is an eternal doodler.
Yeah.
I love that you say that in your profile. You are really good at getting people's attention when you post something. How did you come to start eternally doodling instead of just reposting other people's content?
Well, anybody who knows me knows I think with my hands, and I'm a big whiteboarder, and I think in pictures. So I'm always drawing stuff. I mean, if there's an idea, to me, it's easier to express drawing it. So I have thousands of these ideas and thoughts just stockpiled in my sketchbooks, and so I was like, let me just put them out there and share some tips and ideas, and just use the style that I would use in person. So it's helpful to me because I've been a little frustrated not being in live sessions with people and doing workshops. And you know what? It's been great. I mean, it people pay attention to it, and it always gets a good conversation going. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, the doodling is definitely a thing.
It is. And I know a few people are joining us now. And whether you're watching this live or you end up watching the replay, I would love to see in the chat, how do you get your audience's attention? What is it you're doing now that might be a little different from what you did before the pandemic hit? I'm curious to see what people say, Michael. I'm also finding that some senior executives are assuming now that people have more time to work because they're not commuting, or now let's just pile on a whole bunch of other priorities on people. And I'm noticing a lot of frustration and burnout. That was one of the questions that I am getting really often from people after the live streams. I think it'd be fun for us to talk about how do we help people to make sure that they can get more aligned around a finite set of priorities. What thoughts do you have around that?
Well, I think the goal is to organize your efforts around a very finite and few set of priorities, because as human beings, the less we have to mentally grasp in volume, the more engaged we become. It's the same in messaging. It's the same in strategies. You're going to see just throughout my career, I've seen far more success with strategies that are simple and focused around one big idea. They could have subpoints, but around one big idea, than what we call these worksheet strategies that are just piles and piles of granular details, right? Now, these granular details need to be done, but if they're not wrapped in a single burning spear priority, it's really hard for people to understand why they're doing things. So, I think there's a level of, granularity. How many things am I throwing at people? And there's also a matter of gravity, right? One priority that everybody's passionate about, and then, wrapping it around there. So yeah, I do think people have too many priorities, are getting burned out. Too much.
Yeah, it's just too much. This is hearkening back to a time I was consulting to a large enterprise software company, and the CEO brought everybody together at this big conference. Well, it was their top 30 leadership team members. And we were at a similar time where there had been a real dip in the market. The economy was not going so well, and there were discussions around potential recessions. And this software CEO, who had to bring everybody together and kind of rally the troops again, got up in front of us. And I will never forget it. It was this beautiful office, surrounded by glass walls and very fancy. And he said, well, I want everybody to get ready. I put together a PowerPoint presentation, and I want to walk you through the 36 goals and priorities that we have for the next year. Now, this is called the You Cannot Make This Up department. And within 6 months, the company, the software firm, was sold for pennies on the dollar because nobody could focus on 36 priorities. It was sad.
Yeah. It's easier to do, phalanxes of strategies and piles. It is very hard. It's very hard to get that focused and that simple. Yeah. For two reasons, for whittling it down, but also the more focused you become, the more accountable you become, which means the more likely there's a risk of failure, right? If you become more accountable and more clear about what you're trying to do, you also feel more risk. So 36 priorities, I mean, I'm sorry, but you can hide under you put a Mack truck through that. You can hide in 36 priorities and be unaccountable completely, right?
Yeah, I understand. It still makes me laugh. Oh, Bonnie's with us from North Carolina. She has a seasoned CMO. She says, I think there's a lot of competition for companies to gain attention. I believe a heightened level of CEO leadership, a laser focused understanding of where your clients are hanging out, and a very astute understanding of their needs so you can effectively target them with the right content is key. So yeah, being everywhere your clients are. I love what Bonnie is saying there. Is there anything you would add to that, Michael?
Well, yeah, I think, being where your clients are, I mean, it's just supporting what we're already saying, which is being very focused. Because when you're focused, you can identify the content, and you can have a really powerful focus and depth when you're not going in 17 directions. So, and that makes it more influential, right? I think that we talk a lot about tools and channels, but really it's the influence of the communication that makes the biggest difference, I think. And that's where the focus really helps.
Yes. And I also invite people, put out in the chat right now, this is the no guilt and the no shame area here. So I would love to see in the comments, for those of you watching, how many priorities are you currently juggling? Just put a number in the chat. It would be interesting to see that as it comes in. And in the meantime, Michael, I also think it's a great time to share what you and I are seeing around the types of skills that are helping marketing executives get promoted faster and contribute more broadly to the growth conversation, not the order fulfillment conversations that you and I chatted about, but truly the growth conversations in their organizations. What are you seeing bubbling up to the surface now as some really key skill areas?
Well, I would say maybe it's a macro skill, not necessarily a marketing skill. And that's the ability to change, to be agile in how you develop your marketing, and to be able to change. Because I think the one skill we all need right now is the ability to adapt, and not only adapt, but to see opportunities when things change, so that we're not constantly surprised and flummoxed by our current world, right? So I would say that the ability to experiment, the ability to message test very quickly, of course, that involves, the right technologies and channels to do it in, but having that skill to do that, and then to step back and say, hey, our strategy seemed really smart 6 months ago. Now it's just not working, right? And the ability to stop and to be able to shift and to refocus things, I think, is a big skill. And I would say it's a big skill for everybody, not just marketing.
Yes. You and we worked with such a great client that was in the nonprofit sector. And that was one of their key areas they wanted to really beef up, was this culture of experimentation, this willingness to take risks and know you're going to make some mistakes. And as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or unethical, you can make mistakes. And boy, through them as well. And, they had a huge revenue gap they needed to close, and they just weren't closing it because they were holding back, right? They were afraid to take big leaps. And then when they did take a big leap, sometimes it could take them 2 years to get to that other side of the mountain ridge. So it was great to work with them and see how they started to dramatically improve and feel more confident about trying new things in short bursts of experimentation.
Yeah,
That
I
was
remember
fun.
the one struggle, or I think that it's not a struggle, but it's an important thing that I noted during that engagement was you have people who are naturally agile. They can just go into the fog and work things out, and they're completely comfortable with it. And there's some people who are perfectly brilliant and skilled, and they hate that. They cannot stand to move quick and to change things up. So I think that in these, like this big organization like this, you have all the different thinking styles, right? And you need them all, but you also need them to work together. So you need the native agile people to understand that some people have to be addressed in a certain way to be more agile, but they're never going to say be as agile as somebody who just wakes up in the fog and loves it, right? So that, to me, that was a big factor in how this brilliant client, that was a challenge for him, right? Is to get everybody on board and to move faster than they were.
Yes, our biggest enemy in those situations is typically tradition and experience. Wait a minute, you're saying, wait, Lisa, that's contrarian. I thought tradition and experience would serve us better. But in reality, they work against us in this new world of marketing. And we need to accept that and say, let me put those aside and try a new approach. Oh, we have a question from Ken in Canada, Michael, that's on the heels of this.
Oh, yeah.
He's asking, what are the first steps to building a culture of experimentation?
Well, I would say that depends on where you start, right? If you're a big, large traditional organization, it's going to be tougher, right? And I think the elimination of fear is number one, because I think fear, I mean, we don't want to lose our jobs. We don't want to take risks that are unnecessary. So that from the top, you need to encourage some people need to be taught how to fail, which is kind of a weird thing to teach, but some people need to understand that failure is part of it. Now it's calculated failure, but I think, culture of experimentation starts at the top with the elimination of fear and the championing of the experimentation process, where failure isn't failure, it's good information, right? It's good information. So agile people are like, hey, that didn't work out. So now we have this. We're not going to do this again. That's a good input. So you keep trying and you get better and better. So, but I do think it starts at the top. It's great to talk about, but if the people at the top are not making it safe for you to do that, it's not going to happen, right?
Yes, that's where it starts. And especially for any of you watching who work for smaller entrepreneurial companies, this is really key. If you're working in a multi-billion-dollar organization, sometimes it's a little easier to go rogue because they can create a spin-off company and set you away, make sure you're removed from the physical building where the mothership is located. And they can send you off and put a skunk works team together. And that can be very successful. But in a smaller organization, let's say you have 20 employees or even 50 employees, it's a lot harder to move the needle without the founders being 100% supportive of that culture of experimentation. I want to add and also layer on something too, Michael, to what you're saying, which is I see 3 key areas there that have to be addressed. It has to start with the leader having the intention of cultivating experimentation, as we just said. Second, though, that psychological safety, that you've got to build in some rituals in your meetings and in your group gatherings where you actually celebrate when there was one of these learning moments or an innovation that we kicked off that actually failed, but we were able to learn from it and do a better iteration next time.
Yeah.
So creating those what rituals can you inculcate into your culture so that, we could say, oops, we had an oops moment. This is what we learned. We cleaned it up. We saved money. We moved on.
Yeah.
And then the third,
go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped right in there. Forget the third one, Lisa. I've got something I want to tell you.
But wait, there's more.
We don't need the third one. No, go ahead. I'm done.
I know. Well, for me on Fridays, it's hard for me sometimes to count to 3, but I do have a third one, which is you got to add constraints to the mix. And I mean constraints of time, constraints of talent, and constraints of the team. So I say, put a box around it and say, look, you got 4 weeks to do this. And don't come back to me with a PowerPoint. I want to see a mock. I want to see something that's workable, even if it's version 1.0, and come back to me with some answers, not, a dog and pony show. And boy, you'd be amazed at how well as humans we operate when we're under those kinds of constraints. We have Rebecca with us from Washington, D.C. Hey, Rebecca, a CMO here in the DMV area. She's asking a question about juggling multiple priorities. She's added one on top of all those, improving internal communication to adapt to today's virtualization. If leadership is not on the same page, then it is tough to tackle one focus, let alone multiple priorities. What say you, Michael?
There was a book I read a while back, and I think the name of it was Fierce Conversations. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not, but I kind of like her format for approaching, for conducting difficult conversations, right? Like in her case, she's got too many things, right? And she's got to confront her boss or people above her with paring it down so she can be effective. And so I would encourage looking at Fierce Conversations, and I can't rattle off the template, but it's something like, it's a very good structure saying, I need you to work with me. I need you to help me decide because this is at stake, right? This is the reality. So it's a very objective conversation, and it boils down to not me trying to force my managers to change their ways, but for them to come into a productive conversation where we all agree on the same reality, the same ground truth. We all agree on the impact, and we also agree on the impact of decisions either not being made or made. And I would recommend it if you can dig it up somewhere.
Great. Let's make sure we put that in the comments section for everybody. Fierce Conversations is certainly a great resource. I also want to provide a second resource, Michael, which is something that we actually developed together, having advised so many dozens of clients around getting people aligned around a common vision that is focused on the customer. For those of you that may not have taken this 3-minute survey, this is a great conversation starter at your next internal meeting. Go to tinyurl.com/digital CMO. This is a readiness checklist that we developed after working with so many clients, and it gives you an instant snapshot around 15 key areas and to determine, are we ready to experiment? Are we ready to shift gears and adapt to the new customer realities? So go check that out. It's a free resource available on my website. Kyle is with us, Michael. Let's see what he has to say. Boy, we're getting a lot of great questions today. Thank you all for being here and putting these together. He thinks He likes Seth Godin's take on skills, where a publishing company he partners with overlooked the opportunity of the internet. They passed on the chance of becoming what Google is now. He thinks with the evolving environment that we need to not have tunnel vision and have the ability to see potential opportunities. Oh, well, in theory, Kyle, thank you so much for being here. In theory, I'm with you 100%, but what about when we have to put that in practice, Michael? Where do we get stuck?
Well, that's a very big question, right? But I would say that if you look at trends, and I'll date myself. I've been around a long time, and up and down. We've seen markets go up and down, right? And we see how when things get really tough, like now, or confusing, that we tend to have tunnel vision, as Kyle says, and we close up and we become conservative. When in fact, if you look back at the other tough cycles, you always see that there's a collection of people. The first thing they say is, what are the new opportunities now in this disaster unfolding before us, right? So it is absolutely true, if you look at every terrible period, that there's always a small group of people that do really, really well because they're thinking, where is the opportunity in that? Now, I know it's not easy when you're afraid. If you have a pandemic or you have a depression, or, obviously you have to do things that are defensive, are conservative, but you just should never leave that piece out and go, and I know there are unique opportunities right now in this mess. If I can only just look more closely at it, I think that's critical to do that. It's very counterintuitive, right? When your fear is in the air.
Yes. We have to, you and I joke about this. My daily job, especially over the last 19 months, has been daily exercises to transform my fear into excitement. And I know we joke about it, and you probably hear me say the word excited a lot in these live streams. I just find that I'm a heck of a lot more creative when I say I'm excited than when I say I'm afraid. Because how blessed are we here sitting in this LinkedIn discussion group today that nobody's shooting at us. We are not, our basic needs are met, and we get to spend time with each other, learning and growing. To me, that's a heck of a lot more about excitement than fear, don't you think?
Yeah, I think fear certainly puts you in the weakest thinking mode. And when you feel good, there's a piece of your brain that opens up, that's fluid with ideas, and also is more sharp about seeing opportunities. If you're afraid, opportunities can bounce off of your face and you wouldn't see them, right? But if you feel strong and you feel great, and you at least carve out some time to look at the world, to look at your market, and to look at the changes going on from a little bit of distance from your fear, you can see things. And sometimes they jump out at you, right? Because you're in the right mindset. So yeah, I think there is definitely a psychology component to that. There are people, again, just like the agile, some people are born agile. Some people are born more optimistic.
Yes,
and of course,
I want to
your
hear
advice
from
can't
people.
be born more optimistic, right? Go ahead.
Yes, I was going to add to that. That was a yes, and that I want to hear in the chat from people. Do you find yourself to be a natural pessimist, a pragmatist, or an optimist? Pessimist, pragmatist, or optimist? Let's just see what people say in the chat, Michael. That'd be fun to see what people share. And in the meantime, while we're doing that, we have a comment from Fuad in Virginia. Hi, Fuad. We're so glad you could join us today. Focusing on very limited objectives is an ideal approach for a successful business operation. Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. I talk a lot about that in my first book. I called it shiny penny syndrome, where it's very easy to get, and where you get distracted, right? It's like, oh, there's a new social media platform. Oh, I heard about Clubhouse. Oh, I heard about this new feature in Facebook or whatever. Oh, Chris, you're an optimist. I knew that. Yes, Rebecca, same here. There's a reason you're all here today. I think we're kind of drawn to each other. Kyle, we're waiting on you to weigh in too, and Sharon and some others.
I remember I took I was in a Vistage group, which was this kind of peer group. And, we're always getting speakers that were giving us tests, right? Tests and personality tests. And so there was one test, and it was related to optimism, right? And my score was delusional. There's optimistic, and then there's sort of like, it was sort of like, I was so optimistic, I was borderline, didn't get it, right? So I was like, I need to be more, research oriented or something. But it was like, what? But I'm kind of kidding, but I was on the very high end of optimism, which meant I could be a little impulsive and reckless in my decision making. So that was kind of funny.
That is funny. And, if any of you follow the work of Dr. David Hawkins, who wrote this seminal book called Power versus Force, where he spent 50 years researching human behavior and human potential. And what he learned is that, our positivity, our optimism, our ability to put our head above the clouds and look out and say, what's next, is a whole different, I'll call it, and I'm going to get a little woo-woo here. There's a spiritual element to this, but it's also a different vibration of energy than woe is me, the sky is falling, Eeyore. It's a whole different mindset, and it's our job to come together here in these forums and be optimists, and maybe be pragmatic optimists, right? And Ken, absolutely. We understand life can be a bumpy road, but at least it is leading somewhere. I love that. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of optimists and still a couple of comments before. Oh, thank you, Kyle. We got a couple more comments coming in. And I think I also want to say hi to Sharon in Maryland, who put the link in, the order link for the book by Susan Scott on Fierce Conversations. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
That's fantastic. I'd like to wrap up with a question around some of the core areas that we can study going forward as we create a new path going forward to grow our businesses in this virtual hybrid world of customer interaction. Is there a particular skill you personally are going to be developing or cultivating further, Michael?
Well, there's one I'm always cultivating because it's one of the more powerful things I hear from clients that I do, and that is to facilitate decision making, to hold workshops where in a very short period of time you can get people to decide things that they've been struggling with for months or years. So that's always something I'm trying to hone my chops on. And I would say now there's an emphasis on doing that hybrid model or virtualizing some of those facilitated workshops. So I'm really trying to notch that up because I think that is a skill that's very important right now, is the ability to quickly make informed decisions. And I think anything that does that, because when we go into these big clients, what is the biggest problem? They're not deciding. They're not making decisions. They're leaving them on the table. And sometimes that's what's going on. They just need to come together, make a decision they all support, and move on. So I think anything around that, anything around virtualization, including some technology, but also anything around facilitating and organizing a great decision quickly, right, is, I think, a huge thing to learn right now.
Yes. And if any of you are interested in making decisions more quickly, getting to conclusions, and learning how to build your own culture of experimentation. Michael, I think this would be a great time to tell everybody what's coming up on November 3rd.
Yeah, we're going to do a 75-minute workshop. It's complimentary. We're looking for a small group of people. I think we only have a few.
Four left.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have a couple of slots. It's a good fit for people who are stuck, like people who own, growth. They own P&L. They're CMOs. They're stuck with internal hurdles. Like we said, they're in decision muck. It's 75 minutes, and we've got a template for working out the foundations that are critical for aligning internal teams to deliver quickly on customer value. All right. That sounds like a whole bunch of consultant language, but these are 5 critical items, pillars that we found in our research are absolutely necessary for people to rally together and deliver value to their customers. And so we're going to come in with that template. We're going to map out the 5 pillars, and they're going to walk away with it. So that's it. It's a lot of fun. It's one of our quick facilitations. So hope we can get the next, couple of people that we're looking for.
Yes, we have already some CMOs from financial services, cybersecurity, publishing, and a couple of other industries. So we would love to hear from you if you're interested and if you qualify. We don't do this very often, so this is your opportunity to take advantage November 3rd. So contact me for details. Michael, it's been great to see you again. And I know you'll be back again next quarter. So have a great weekend. And for those of you watching, make sure you connect with Michael on LinkedIn. Take care, Michael.
Thank you so much. Had a great time, guys. Take care.
Well, my friends, that was my extra announcement I wanted you to hear because, I've just been feeling very generous since October started and fall started to just bloom here in Virginia. So take advantage of some of the special things that we're doing for you in the next few weeks. And let's talk also about those of you on the go. Are you on the go? Because if you like to cook and learn at the same time or run and learn at the same time, remember that I host a podcast called the Mindful Marketer Podcast. So follow that link and listen where you access your favorite podcasts. And if you're feeling generous as well, leave me a review. I'd appreciate it. And as we wrap up, I always promise to share 3 takeaways. This is the mindful moment. I would say the first takeaway today from the conversation is that a lot of people who participate in our live streams are pragmatic optimists. So we all share that in common. The second is that we have to go beyond traditional marketing skills and learn how to ask what's next and how can we go out and experiment in these areas to see what will stick. And the third takeaway from today is that storytelling will never go out of style. And it is still one of the weakest skill areas that my clients and our followers talk about. And so I invite all of you who heard some good stories today to build some of your own stories and pass them on to people to inspire them to take the next step or make change happen. Because we're all here to disrupt the status quo and make the world a better place. Speaking of making the world a better place, my life is also better because of people like my next guest, November 5th. New York Times bestselling author Chip Conley will be joining us from either his home in Baja, Mexico, or Austin, Texas. I'm not sure which. We're going to be talking about marketing with wisdom in a post-COVID world. We have been friends for nearly 17 years, and I cannot wait to introduce you to Chip Conley on November 5th. So until then, stay mindful, get outside and enjoy this beautiful fall weather.